Microsoft Excel is one of Microsoft's most versatile Office applications. Because Excel has so many capabilities, keyboard shortcuts have been created to enable faster access to popular features. Now let's check out Part 2 of Excel's greatest keyboard shortcuts for increasing productivity and saving time. When you upgrade a plain table to a proper Excel data table, the sort and filter controls are automatically displayed in the table's header. If you're not using these controls, later versions of Excel provide you with a filter button on the table design ribbon that you can turn those filter controls off. If you don't have the filter button because you might be running an earlier version of Excel, you can go to the data ribbon and just simply toggle the filter button on and off. Another way to turn the filter controls on and off is to press Ctrl-Shift and the letter L. Repeatedly pressing Ctrl-Shift-L will either turn the filter controls on or off. A neat thing you can do with Ctrl-Shift-L is reset your filters. Now this is really more of a cheat, because if you go into a table and let's say you filter by product, and maybe I only want to see baseballs and gloves, and I only want to see baseballs and gloves that were sold in the Northeast and Southeast regions, and only from specific purchasers. If you want to clear all of the filters, you can just turn the filters off. Turning the filters off will reveal all of the data. Hitting undo, instead of clicking the filter button on the ribbon, I can perform a Ctrl-Shift-L to turn the filter controls off and reveal all of the data. Now what I mean by a reset is, if I'm currently in a filtered state, I can press Ctrl-Shift-L twice. This will turn the filters off, but then turn them right back on again, so I can create a new filter strategy. So pressing Ctrl-Shift-L twice is just another way to perform a filter reset. Adding a set of numbers together is usually the first mathematical operation that every Excel user performs. To do this, we can click at the bottom of a set of data and then click the Auto Sum button in the upper right corner. If I'm happy with the marquee selection, I can click OK and then use the Fill Series handle to drag that formula to the remaining cells. Although this is extremely easy, it is several steps. Another way to do this is to hold down the Alt key and press the equals button. When you have one cell selected, it performs just like the AutoSum, where the marquee is presented to allow you to proof the selection. If you select several cells and press Alt equal, you're automatically presented with the answers for all of the columns of data. Likewise, you could select cells to the side of the data and perform an Alt equals, and in this case, I would get the total sales for each person as opposed to the total sales for each month. If you'd like to get the total sales for each month, the total sales for each user, and the grand total of all the data, select all of the data, including one additional row and one additional column, and press Alt equals. And that is a very fast way to create the sums for your data. Here's a very simple but powerful keyboard shortcut. When you have a cell that requires editing, to place yourself in edit mode, simply press the F2 key. Now you can go into that cell and you can change the contents. If you're working in a cell with a formula, pressing F2 will then display that formula, of which you can then edit it. When working with more complex formulas, and the results are either errors or the incorrect answer, it can be difficult to know exactly what part of the formula is producing the error. Instead of looking at the final answer, it would be nice if you could see more of an intermediate step answer. This is what the F9 key does for you. The F9 will perform a partial evaluation and show you what a selected part of the formula actually calculates to. In this example, we're using an XLOOKUP function. This is taking the contents of cell B5, which is the employee's pay rate, and locating that pay rate in a rate table. If it finds that rate in the rate table, it then brings back the amount and multiplies that by the hours worked in C5. I've named this rate table TBL. So we have a column called TBL rate and another column called TBL amount. Looking at the XLOOKUP function, it's possible I may have just pointed to the wrong cell, or am using the wrong column from a table, or maybe from the wrong table. To find out what each of the elements in this formula is actually looking at, if I click in the formula bar, in the pop-up I can select lookup value. Pressing the F9 key will then replace the cell selection with the actual value that is in that cell, in this case the number 2. Now here is where you need to be extremely careful. Pressing F9 actually changes your formula. So I've replaced the dynamic reference with a static value. So after you've pressed F9 and evaluated that piece of the puzzle, make sure you hit undo to put the original formula reference back. If I were to choose the lookup array variable, this is pointing to the table called TBL and the rate column. Pressing F9 will actually show me what that reference is seeing, in this case the rates 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to press undo to put the original reference back. The return array, if I press F9, I can see the actual amounts. Anything in the curly braces is known as a list, so this would be a list of the amounts. I'm going to press undo, and then finally, if I were to select C5 and press F9, I can see that C5 sees the number 2. Undo. Now you may have noticed something happening when I select these specific elements of the formula, and that is when I select an element, Excel displays in a very small pop-up what is behind that selection, in this case, the list of numbers 1, 2, and 3. If I were to select return array, I can see the very small list of 15.5, 20, and 10.75. Keep in mind, this is an extremely new Excel feature, and unless you're running the absolute latest and greatest update of Microsoft 365, it's likely you will not have this pop-up. But give it time, and you'll have it eventually. That's it for part 2 of Excel keyboard shortcuts. To see more amazing Excel keyboard shortcuts, see the link in the video description below for parts 1 and 3. Thanks for watching, and remember, at BCTI, the learning never stops.